Hello, and welcome back to Living a Culture of Life podcast by Human Life International. I'm your host, Colleen, and I'm so glad to have you with us today. You may remember back in May, Leigh Ann Woznica joined us on the show to share her story of undergoing IVF and discussing the dark side of the IVF industry. Well, on today's episode, Leigh Ann joins us again to share her story of having 3 abortions, choosing life for her daughter, and then coming to Christianity and discovering the pro-life movement. It's a beautiful story of the forgiveness, healing, and just hope that's possible, and I'm really glad to be able to share it with you today. We also have a fun little opportunity for you. Later in the episode, Leigh Ann discusses her pro-life business, Rebirth Body Butters, which sells tallow skincare products and so much more, and then donates a percentage of its sales to pro-life organizations. Leigh Ann wanted to offer a discount code to listeners of the podcast. So if that's something that interests you, I will put a link to her business in the description, and you can use the code HLI20 at checkout. That's HLI20 at checkout to get 20% off your order. And if you use the discount code, Leigh Ann said that she would donate 10% of the sales back to HLI, which is just so generous of her. So I definitely encourage you to take advantage of this amazing opportunity. And without further ado, please welcome Leigh Ann to Living a Culture of Life. Welcome back to the podcast, Leigh Ann.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm really excited to have you back on. I love having repeat guests because I always feel like I already have a relationship with them, and it is really great to build on previous conversations.
And our last conversation was so smooth. You're just so easy to talk to.
Oh, thank you. It's great to have you on. I love having conversations with different people on the show, and some guests you vibe with, some you don't. And I definitely felt like we had a really good conversation last time.
Thank you. Me too.
Well, you are joining us today to share your story of having an abortion. And before we dive into that, do you mind just sharing with our audience what your perception was of abortion growing up? Like, did you know about it? Did you hear about it? Or is your family pro-life? Were they not? Like, what perceptions around abortion did you have going into this story?
Honestly, I didn't really know anything about it. And to be completely transparent, I was so young when I had my first abortion that I don't even know how I learned about it. All I know is my mom had given a child up for adoption, and I was terrified to tell her I was pregnant. So this was my only option in my head, and that was what we chose to do. But I don't remember how I even learned about it, to be honest. So I didn't have an opinion.
Yeah. Then do you mind sharing your story of like what led to that, circumstances, what that was like for you, what your experience was?
Sure. To go way, way back, I didn't grow up in a double parent home. My father left when I was very young. I was 4. And so it was just her. And she was bitterly angry for all of my childhood. And then my father came back around when I was 10 and told me when I was 12 that my mother had had a child that, and in 1966, you didn't have children in your home. You went to an unwed mother home for teenagers to have children when you were pregnant out of wedlock. So my grandmother actually sent my mom to a place in Washington, D.C. to have her baby. And we're from North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So and my mother was bitterly angry that I knew that. That was not something she ever intended for me to find out. But because I knew how my mom felt about children in general, she'd never wanted me. I knew that finding out I believed that if she found out I was pregnant, that was going to be kind of the end of the world for me. She would kill me, and I was 14. So I had a boyfriend at the time who was 18. And because he was old enough, I don't know if he told me about it, how I found out about Planned Parenthood, but that's where I went. And he was able to sign the paperwork for me to have that procedure done. And my mom never knew.
Was that legal?
Apparently, I'm not really sure because I know abortion was at that point in North Carolina very, very taboo. I mean, we're talking the early 90s. And it was not something that I would have ever told anyone. In fact, I never did tell anyone until way, way later. But they let him sign for me as long as he was over 18. I do remember calling and asking if my mother had to be there. And they told me that I just needed someone over 18. Wow. So, yeah.
Did he like pressure you into it, or was it you deciding because you didn't want to face your mother and that's
It
what
was
made you
me.
choose it?
His family was actually very Christian, and we never went to church with them, but they were very Christian people. And I think that they would have been incredibly supportive had we told them the truth. I don't know if they even know,
Mhm.
but to this day, I don't even know if they're still alive, honestly. But to this day, I don't know if he ever told anyone. But I, I was so terrified of my mom and my grandmother, which were the two parental figures in my life, that I wasn't willing to
That yeah.
tell them. Yeah,
That had to
I
be
was terrified.
what I mean, if you don't mind sharing, like, what was the experience like, especially as a 14-year-old? Like, you're so young at that point. That had to be
Well, when
pretty
I
traumatic.
found out I was pregnant, I was 14. When I had this procedure, I had just turned 15, not even a month before.
Yeah.
Um, but the only thing I remember, and I have since becoming pro-life and really diving into it, understand why this is the only thing I remember. But the only thing I remember is my feet being in the stirrups and I can hear the sound of the suction. Apart from that, I don't remember any of it. Literally none of it. I do remember that I bled for quite a while afterward,
Mhm.
but I don't have a lot of memories. I can tell you the day
Mhm.
and I can tell you that part of the memory, but I don't remember anything else of the procedure.
Why do you so how did becoming pro-life, like, show you why you don't remember it? Like, what did you learn when you became pro-life that makes you realize why you, like, don't have any memories of that day?
They use they use a numbing agent that actually causes some memory loss. So I can't remember the name of it. I actually learned about it when I was doing my training for the Pro Life Pregnancy Center that I volunteer at here in California. And I looked it up after she had told us in our training to see if it was true. And it is very, I mean, this particular drug that they use does have the ability to wipe memories. And then if you watch the Unplanned movie, they talk about it in that movie too. And it's very true.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why that one even have those few memories from, other than it
Mhm.
was so early in my life, it was traumatizing.
Mhm.
And then from that point on, I dove into alcoholism and a very promiscuous lifestyle.
And that was because of the abortion?
I believe so. I mean, I don't know. Of course, they didn't say you're terminating your pregnancy, and if they did, I don't remember it, but I knew what I was doing. And I had been involved in church enough in my lifetime to know that it was probably wrong. But I was in so much fear that that overwhelmed any moral conscience that I had. And I truly believe that a large part of me just wanted to be in so much denial about what I'd done because I've never forgotten that date. And my form of moving on was partying like a rock star. And that's what I did.
I feel like at that age too, it's sometimes a little hard to separate what's, like, natural like, you're so young and you're so forming of yourself at that time that it's hard to say, "Oh, this was my life was going a certain way, and then I had an abortion, and then it went this direction." It's you're still kind of coming of age at that point, so it's hard to pinpoint, was this because of the abortion? Was it because of other things as well to, like, lead to that
I,
lifestyle?
that's probably very true. I do know that I was already
Mhm.
drinking so heavily at the time. I mean, I was 14, I had a boyfriend that was an adult, right? And my mom
Yeah.
condoned it all. So I I didn't really have good boundaries or a good moral conscience to begin with. I was drinking with my mom every weekend. Like that was my life. So yeah,
And your father
being a
wasn't
parent, and my father was not in the picture.
yeah, wasn't in the picture.
Yeah, so being a parent wasn't even something I could conceive of the idea of at 15
Mm.
years old.
Yeah. And then when you were on the podcast before, you mentioned you had a partial hysterectomy because of having an abortion. Was that because of this abortion, or did you have a later one as well?
I had 2 more. Um, so after that fiasco, and again, promiscuity was my middle name, I ended up we're just gonna go down this big rabbit hole. I ended up, getting into a relationship with my mom's drug dealer, who was substantially older than me. And I say relationship very loosely because it was not a true relationship. Anyway, long story short, he got me pregnant, and for some reason I decided to keep that child. So I have one living child. That was 3 years after I had that abortion. Promiscuity continues. I get pregnant 2 more times. Choose not to have those children. And now I believe, because I had multiple procedures done, I had HPV. They thought I had possible cervical cancer. They did a leap on me. They did all these, they were watching me constantly after that. When I was 24, I got my tubes tied so I would never get pregnant again because I didn't want to use abortion for form of birth control. My conscience was really starting to kick in, even though I was still drinking alcoholically. That was actually when some of my promiscuity started to settle down, but then I got my tubes tied, it ramped up again. And I believe that I did so much damage to my uterus through those 3 procedures that there was nothing I could do. I could have kept my uterus, don't get me wrong. And to this day, based on the last podcast I did with you, I have an amazing Christian, wonderful, beautiful husband who I would give my right arm to have children with. But I made the choice because of the complications I was having through menstrual cycles. I had a huge fibroid that was embedded in my uterus that they could not get out. They'd tried. And when they did go in to try and get that fibroid out, they had found polyps that were he said it was like a carpet of polyps in my uterus. I had just done so much damage that I don't know if I could have gotten pregnant again, but I do know that I made a choice in 2009 to just have it taken out. So they removed my uterus and my cervix, and all the problems went away. Except now I can't have kids. Of course, I'm too old now, but back then.
Why did you choose life with yours? Like, is it your daughter, right? You have a daughter. What prompted you to choose life at 17, 18, with your mother's drug dealer?
I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, I can't to this day tell you. I mean, it could have only been by the prickling on my heart of the Holy Spirit. I to this day cannot tell you why I had her. I'm grateful that I did. I just, and if I could go back and rewind time, I would have all of my children here with me. But I don't know why I had her. I was still in such a phase of life where I was partying all the time. The last thing I wanted to do was stop that part of my lifestyle. I say today that by the grace of God, she saved my life, because I don't think I'd be alive today if I hadn't had her. She gave me a sense of responsibility, even though I still drank for the first 11 years of her life. It slowed down. It wasn't a daily activity. But yeah, I really don't know why I chose to have her.
So you didn't have like a pregnancy center or something, like some kind of pivotal moment that helped you?
I wish to God I had, because I would have not had the 2 abortions following that.
Yeah. Did you
I
have
really do.
Like any support at all? Or
no, my mother's husband actually kicked me out of the house at nowhere. As soon as they found out I was pregnant, he kicked me out, and she allowed it.
So did you guess go get a job and a place to live on your own? Did you move in?
I stayed with people that I knew. I did, all the homeless teen things. And I went through government aid to have the baby. I got on Medicaid and had my daughter, and we were on the WIC program. I was actually working in a decent job when I got pregnant. So praise God for that, because I had a good office job. I didn't have insurance through them, and I'd gone to work for them through a temp agency. But after I gave birth to my daughter, they actually hired me on, and then I got insurance. So I got to get off the government assistance. I like to say I used it for what it's actually meant to be used for. It was rather embarrassing to have to go in with a Wix check. That was back in the day when they gave you a check. You didn't have a debit card. But yeah, so I was only on it for the first 6 to 8 weeks of her life. And then they hired me and gave me benefits, and I was able to move on from there. But yeah, I remember we got our first little apartment, and I had like a $38 budget for food and formula because I couldn't breastfeed. And, it's so interesting when I look back, and maybe this is partially the reason why I ended up having the two after I had her,
Mhm.
because it was such a struggle. It was such a struggle. I mean, to be a teen mom and then get pregnant two more times within 2 years of having her,
Mhm.
I'm again, if I could turn the clock back and know what I know today and have had the intercession that I get to be a part of for women today, I don't think I would have ever gone through with an abortion. And I pray that more centers pop up like that across the country as we start seeing some of these abortion clinics closing down. But I just think it's a tragedy that it's so easy to do. And
Mhm.
in a state like North Carolina back in the 90s when it was still the Bible Belt, it just is baffling to me.
Yeah. Well, how beautiful that God provided the job for you and was able like, even though it was a struggle, you still actually you had at least a good job and you're able to, like, have some money for food and formula and all of that. So
Truly, because her father didn't start paying child support until she was over a year old. Yeah. So I was literally on my own. I think my grandmother probably helped me out a little bit here and there, but yeah, she was, um, 100% my responsibility.
in your work in, like, the pro-life movement, have you ever had a chance to, like, interact with girls who are in those shoes and, like, how do you help them now?
I have not actually met many women who have had my experience. Of course, I've met women who have had an abortion.
Mhm.
There are to my I know that we are out there, but I feel like women who have had children and then had abortions after their children are fewer and farther between than I would have realized. But I would be very interested to form some form of support group because I went through the post abortive Bible study just in 2024 and it changed my life forever. And it's the reason that I'm able to talk and have this conversation now without just sobbing because that was the one thing I could not believe that I was forgivable for. And today I know that that's such a different re- reality. Like God forgives us for everything if we just ask and ask with a true heart. And that was transformative.
It's such an important point for pro-lifers to bring is just the compassion and the forgiveness and the mercy, like, speaking the truth with compassion. I remember reading a Twitter thread a few months ago, and it was talking about how one of the biggest hurdles pro-lifers have to passing pro-life laws is the fact that so many women who have had abortions, I think the statistics are 1 in 4 women have had abortions, and there's this kind of psychological protection of, I need to oppose any pro-life initiatives because if those pro-life initiatives exist, if this law forbids abortion after such and such time, it's a kind of constant reminder of what women have gone through, and they kind of they either have to, like, say that abortion is fine all the time, or they have to face the reality of what they've done, and
Mhm.
that there's, like, a psychological force against getting pro-life initiatives off the ground, and so when pro-lifers can kind of diffuse that by offering the forgiveness and mercy and walking with women through that, it kind of opens the door to more fruitful conversations and to just a more fruitful movement in general.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Mhm.
I was one of those people. I was still what I would have called pro-choice until I became a Christian, until I started walking with Christ, and
Yeah.
that wasn't until 2019, but even then, I didn't realize how pro-life I really was until I saw a video of what a suction abortion actually did to the baby, and I will never forget that day. My husband and I were sitting on a plane, and I saw that video, and he looked over, and he was like, "Why are you watching that right now?" Because I just lost it. I was sobbing, and it was a harsh reality of what I had done
Mhm.
to my children, and, because the chemical abortion pill, thank God, wasn't even available at that point, but I to kind of go back to what you were saying, I think that is very true. I chose to make it so that my body could not have children anymore because deep down, we all have a moral conscience. I don't care who you are. And so instead of making a significant change in my lifestyle, I made a significant change to my body so that I couldn't produce children anymore. And then even more significant in having a partial hysterectomy, 15 years later.
Mhm.
But I do believe that that is a big reason why so many women who call themselves Christian, or even not even the Christian women, but women who are post-abortive, do not want to support pro-life laws because they can't face that reality. And so they will do anything and say anything to make it justifiable to heed their own guilt and suppress it. Because
Yeah.
I don't care who you are, even these women who are out there touting abortions on social media today as if it's this great ritualistic sacrifice, which it is, they're deep down inside, we're all born with a conscience. We're all born with the law of God on our heart.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And it is the ritualistic sacrifice, not that it's great. And that's
yes,
like they try to make it to be this like the woman who is wearing the hat, like the make abortion great again. And it's not. They can try to glamorize it all they want, but that's not if you they know,
yes,
I think. Yeah. If you don't mind, do you mind sharing what your experience was like with your later 2 abortions as well? You said that were they both vacuum abortions or
they
were they
were.
okay.
But those two, I don't remember. I don't remember going to the clinic. I don't remember leaving the clinic. I literally either it is just something that my mind will not allow me to relive, or that drug specifically that had gotten way better and stronger, but I can't remember any of it. I have no idea who took me. I have no idea who brought me home. I just know I did it. I honestly would love to be able to give more testimony around it just to kind of almost scare people. I know that sounds terrible, but if it doesn't scare you enough that I cannot remember any of that procedure,
Mhm.
let it be a lesson to you that they are intentionally making it so we forget.
Yeah. How has that affected your relationship with your daughter?
My daughter is pro abortion. My
Okay.
daughter is not a Christian. My daughter does not have any interest in having a conversation with me about it. In fact, my daughter is currently getting a certification or a license to be an esthetician and has recently told
Mhm.
me that she will not support my skincare company. She wants to, but
Mhm.
she can't, in good conscience, support it because it's a pro life company.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I just pray.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how it's affected my daughter is that when she found out that I was walking with Christ and pro life,
Mhm.
she didn't speak to me for 2 months. And when Roe versus Wade got overturned and I was happy about it, she didn't speak to me for a while. So, it's a subject that's very touchy for us, but I don't avoid it with her,
Mhm.
and she doesn't bring it up with me.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry I asked. I had,
It's okay.
Krista Corbello on the podcast about a couple years ago, and she lost a sibling to abortion. So she was talking about the experience of being a sibling and what that's like and how it differs from losing a sibling to miscarriage. It was a really interesting conversation. So I kind of brought that up to see if
I've
you're
had those thoughts, and I actually have 3 siblings that my mother aborted.
Mm.
So not only did she give one up, but she had
Mhm.
3 others that she aborted. I did not know this until way later in life. Um, so it's kind of interesting, the way I view it being a Christian. I know I'm gonna see them all in heaven. I got a huge family in heaven. My husband and I have 8 embryos that we formed in during IVF, so I've got a gigantic family when I get to heaven. I'm so excited to meet them all. I do wonder, my daughter always wanted siblings. She always wished I would have had more children when she was growing up. So I do wonder if there's a level of anger in her that she's not willing to expose to me because of having those abortions. I took her siblings away from her.
Or something even just subconscious, like, even if it's not something that she would even ever
Mhm.
put it into those words, a kind of subconscious realization that something's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you then talk a little bit about your journey to, like, becoming pro-life? You said that that was basically when you became a Christian, like,
Mhm.
what what was that like for you?
So this is actually a beautiful story, and I may have told a little bit of the story on the last podcast that I did with you. So if I repeat myself, I apologize, but it's the most, to me, it's the most amazing part of my transformation. When my husband and I were doing IVF, before we dug into it and realized what it was really all about, I had not told him my abortion history. He knew I'd had one, but he didn't know I'd had multiples. And I was so terrified of him to find out about it. I actually asked the IVF doctor if that was something that we could keep secret from him. I mean, I was terrified for him to find out. And the day we found out that we had lost those 8 embryos, we were sitting in the driveway in our car, and I broke down and said, "I've got to tell you something." And I told him the truth. Oh, I get teary eyed every time I talk about this. And I told him the truth right then and there. And before he could even get a word out, I said, "You need to go find somebody who can have children with you."
Mm.
And I just pushed him away. And my husband looked at me and said, "If you think that's what love is," and this is not verbatim because I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "That's not what love is. That's not how you love people. You don't walk away because they can't give you what you want." And so from that point, we kind of talked and I cried and we walked into the house. And he put his arms around me in our office that day and he said, "If we don't ever have children, I will never regret being in this relationship with you. I will never regret our choice and I will always love you." And it was the first time in my life I'd ever seen what true unconditional love is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
My mother had never shown that kind of love to me. And so later, before she died, she did. But in my childhood, I'd never, ever seen that. You know, my father had abandoned me. So I had no idea what it was like to have somebody just love you right where you're at, no matter what you'd done. You know, it was just, I love the person that you are. And it was, to me, that was seeing Jesus's love. That was seeing what they talk about in the Bible about how we're supposed to love somebody. And he was my husband, you know? I mean, I didn't want him to go, but I couldn't give him kids. And so he showed me, he showed me Jesus that day, like what I'd always read about. And it changed my life forever. And I struggled so hard over the abortion past through all of that. That would have been in 2018. And it wasn't until 2024 that I truly became healed. And it was, God love him. He had to watch me and deal with me just breaking down emotionally all the time because I couldn't give him kids. I mean, it was a pretty constant thing for many years. Whenever we would see somebody pregnant or talk about kids or whatever, I mean, it was just a constant sob fest for me until I did that post-abortive Bible study because I didn't feel worthy of him. I didn't feel worthy of God. I didn't feel worthy in general. I lived with so much guilt and shame over that past. And it wasn't until after I did that Bible study that I started coming clean, for lack of a better word, about my past and finding out that there are a lot of people out there who've had multiple abortions. In fact, more than 50% of women who've had one have had more than one.
Yeah. Was there anything about the Bible study that like stands out to you as a moment where you were just really felt healed or where you really experienced like God's forgiveness and mercy?
There is a chapter on forgiveness, and a lot of that chapter had to do with us forgiving other people, which I had done. I've been sober since 2006, and I had forgiven everyone in my life for everything. Like that's part of the process of getting sober. But in that particular Bible study, it takes you through these verses of God showing his forgiveness. And it's Old Testament, New Testament. The book is incredible, but it takes you through seeing God's forgiveness and why forgiving ourselves is so important. So that's it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I don't know exactly how to say this. I feel like in Christian circles, sometimes the conversations about your relationship with yourself can get forgotten. Like, there's a lot of emphasis on your relationship with God and your relationship with other people. And it's also important to be able to recognize, like, okay, am I in a state where I can even experience God's forgiveness? Like, and I'm open to it. Like, I'm not just blaming myself. Like, that voice inside your head, how you speak to yourself, like, that's really important, and it's gonna affect your relationship with God, and it's gonna affect your relationship with other people as well, and I think it's important to keep all 3 in the conversation in mind.
Right, and that was actually part of what hit me so hard was there's a verse in the Bible, and I can't remember where it says, if you hold on to unforgiveness for others, then God can't forgive you. And I thought, wow. And for some reason during that study, it hit me. I was like, okay, if I can forgive everybody else, but I can't forgive myself, it's still unforgiveness, and God's never going to forgive me. And it took a while for me to work through that. And what's so funny is I had an AA sponsor early on in my sobriety who was a Christian, and she used to tell me all the time, because she knew that was the one thing I couldn't let go of. She was the only person I'd ever told the truth to, and she knew I couldn't let go of it. And she said, every time you tell me you can't forgive yourself, you're telling me you're more powerful than God. And that always stuck with me. But I still couldn't get there until I did that study.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Wow. I've never thought of it that way
Isn't that
before.
harsh?
There's an element of I guess, like, yeah, there's an element of pride wrapped up in that just struck me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And ego works two ways. It works in the positive and the negative. So you can have this super inflated ego about yourself from I am better than, or look at me, but anytime we're reflecting on ourselves in a negative way, that's also ego, because
Mm.
we aren't letting go and letting God. And so it took me a really long time. I mean, it
Yeah.
was 25 years of living with Satan on my back, holding me down and whispering all the negative in my ear before I was able to be free. And that's actually what the Bible study is called, is set free.
Okay. Yeah. And then
Freedom and set free. Hmm?
did you say that you work with pregnancy centers now?
I do here in my hometown. Yeah. Yeah.
How did that come about? Did you just once you kind of underwent this, did you wanna be able to share that with other
I
women? Were
sure
you
did.
when I had, Wendy Burpee on the podcast 3 years ago, she was talking about how she got involved at a pregnancy center and never connected it to her previous abortions. Like, it just the way that her life was turning out, she ended up in this position, and then, like, at some point it hit her where she's like, "Oh, okay, God, like, I see what you did here. I see why you put me in this position." So, like, what was your
Interesting.
journey like to that?
Well, I knew I wanted to do the Bible. So I started donating to my company is a pro-life company, and I
Mhm,
donate to pregnancy centers and like preborn and, places that are pro-life.
mhm,
Um, and so I knew we were moving back to California. We were living in Alaska when I started this business, and we were following a church in a different town. We were watching online, and went to their website to see who they worked with
mhm,
for pro-life. And I found this pregnancy center that's like an hour and a half away from where we live, and I started donating to them. Well, when we got down to California, she called me, the head of the center called me and said, "We actually have a gala." This was like 2 weeks after we moved back, not even that long, I don't think. She said, "We actually have a gala coming up. Would you like to come?" And I thought, "Well, sure." And so we go to this gala, and it was super fun. But this guy who is their lead speaker talks about his abortion past and going through this Bible study. And I thought, oh, I really want to go through this Bible study, but you have to do it in person. And so I met a new friend here and was telling her about it. Well, she had worked with the Pregnancy Resource Center here in our town. And so she introduced me to the executive director at a church event.
mhm.
And I found out about the Bible study. Well, then I decided I really wanted to volunteer for them. But you have to go through that Bible study to volunteer. So the timing couldn't have been more perfect, because I went through the study September through November of last year. And then the training started in February of this year. So it's been a 8-month journey now, well, almost a year, but it's the best thing I've ever done. I mean, what better way to help educate women on abortion than bring them in when they're scared to death
Mhm.
and walk through it with them hand in hand, hoping they'll have their baby.
I also feel like there's so much compassion that comes with having been through it yourself. Like, there's only so much someone on the outside, like, you can empathize, you can walk with them, but being able to sit there and say, Like, I know what it's like to be in your shoes. Here's what I wish someone had told me. Here's like what happens when you do choose life and like the joys that that brings. Like, you can relate to them in a way that they're able to trust you a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. We're not, we don't really share a ton of our own personal history with our clients that come in, but we do let
Mhm.
them know that we know what they're, we know what it's like to feel the pull of those decisions and, a little bit about our experience, but for the most part, our purpose is to just try and bring them to Christ so that the Holy Spirit can get in there and work on their heart.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. What do you wish someone had told you back when you were in that state? Like, what would like, if you had had a pregnancy resource center that you could have gone to, like, what do you wish pro-lifers how do you wish that they'd been there for you?
well, it's so funny that you asked me that question because we have to role play when we're training at our center. And so I role played with our client advocate manager, and she was so amazing. I just sitting there pretending to be my 15-year-old self, wanting to have an abortion. She was so nurturing and just reminded me that I am a child of God. And I mean, it, we kind of find out where they're at in their faith before we even bring God up. But she just, she made me feel like I wasn't alone. And that's the whole purpose of it, right? It's to make you feel like you're not going through it alone. And I don't care who you are, when your mind is set on having an abortion, it's 90% because you feel like you're not going to have support
Mm.
financially, emotionally, whatever the case may be. It's almost always because there's a lack of support and there's so much fear around that. I mean, having a child is not cheap. It takes so much time. And if you're selfish and in your own way, then you miss out on the opportunity of bringing life into the world. And that's really what it's all about. Of course, we don't tell people that they're selfish, but we always want people to feel like they're not alone. And I felt so alone, even though the boyfriend at the time was there with me. He was supporting it. He didn't fight me on it at all. He didn't want to have that child either. So when she was talking to me as if you have other options, it felt cozy and comfortable. And not everybody's going to do that and agree with that. But if there's one or two that don't feel like they're completely isolated in their situation, it's better than none.
Yeah.
So that's what I wish. I wish somebody would have just made me feel less alone and less afraid.
That's so important to remember. I feel like, again, so many conversations around abortion in like the culture can go like we already talked about it in concept of like, oh, should we pass this law? Should we not? And I think one of the beautiful things about pregnancy resource centers, like something that they bring to the pro-life conversation is just like the personal, like I'm here for you one on one. You're not alone. Like turn off the noise of all the cultural conversations around this. Like we're here to help you choose life in this individual circumstance and like the power of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They are truly amazing.
Do you want to tell our audience a little bit about your company?
Oh, sure. Um, I'm a crunchy Christian. It's what I call myself. I love all things natural. And when we were living in Alaska, it's so dry and arid up there. And I think you're in a dry climate too, aren't you? Or a cold climate?
Virginia's pretty humid,
Oh,
but
you're in Virginia.
we're in
I
Virginia.
don't know why I thought
Yeah.
you were in the Midwest for some reason. Never
No.
Um, anyway, I was using tallow to cook because I love keto carnivore type lifestyles. And I just, every time I went to our natural grocery store, could not find anything that didn't have some chemical in it. And I
Mhm.
didn't want to use them. They kept drying me out. They would make my skin itchy. So I started making a tallow body butter that has 4 ingredients: tallow, shea butter, jojoba oil, and essential oils. My husband loved it. I sent it to some people around the country that wanted to try it and they all loved it. And so this turned into a business. I've been praying for God to use me in some way.
Mhm.
And he put on my heart to make it a pro-life business. So that's what we did. We started donating 10% of our sales to pro-life, and we do skincare. We have face creams. We have chapsticks. We have sunscreen. We have our body butter, and we have candles and wax melts. We have all kinds of fun stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you just like basically you wanted God to use you in some way. So you're like, hey, I can donate part of this to pregnancy centers. Like that's how that came about.
that, and it gave me a platform to talk about abortion and to open that conversation up. I think that there are a lot of really good pro-life companies out there. I don't know if any of the people who started those companies are post-abortive. And I think that more women who have had abortion that call themselves pro-life need to speak out about their experience, because it's one thing to be pro-life and have, I personally, if somebody who was pro-life who'd never experienced it, came to me after having gone through it myself, I don't know if I would receive it as well as someone who has walked that walk and understands what that feels like. So I think that, you know, there's a lot of young women out there, and my brand is very trendy and reaches a lot of young people. There's a lot of young women out there who may still be considering that option for whatever reason. And I just want to be a voice of reason for them however I can. So it opened that platform up for me without me having to create a whole new personal page. So
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about evangelization is finding something that you can connect with someone on, and then it kind of opens the door for more fruitful conversations down the road. Like, you don't need to come on and be like, here's my religious, like, not like there's anything wrong with having like a religious company or a pro-life company, but I think of it with like 7 Weeks Coffee too, where they have like coffee and everybody likes coffee, and then it opens the door to a different conversation. It's important to be able to facilitate like similarities before
mhm,
talking about differences.
yeah, I agree. It was interesting. I just did a show where some people bought my product for wholesale in
Mhm.
their store and then went to my website and saw that my business is rooted in Christianity, and they canceled their orders. So, but then God opened a door the next day. So you never know. You might see us in a store near you one day soon.
That's
So,
true. That's awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
I love the crunchy lifestyle, so I, like, saw your website was about, like, all tallow products, and I was like, "That's so cool, I love it." We actually just came out with, an ebook talking about companies that fund Planned Parenthood and why it's important to have, like, pro-life alternatives too, so I feel like it's important to kind of have the conversations around, like, what types of businesses can people support that are doing good with their money versus, like, which companies are using their profits for evil. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Well,
Well,
if your
Leanne.
listeners are interested in a discount code, I can give you one to put in the show notes.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Um, our audience is mostly pro-life. What do you hope that pro-lifers would take away from this conversation? Because I think there's a difference when you present your story of like, this was my abortion experience to people who might be considering abortion versus people who are already know that abortion's wrong. What do you hope that they'll take away from it?
Well, I think you hit the statistic on the head earlier. 1 in 4 women have had an abortion, and I think there are a lot of pro-life women who don't want to reveal that information, and I don't think they need to. I don't think everybody needs to, but I think that women need to search their heart and make sure that they have gone through the true forgiveness process, even if they need to do it in private. Um, I would suggest anyone listening to your podcast to search their heart if they've had an abortion, because I was pro-life before I walked through that Bible study. That Bible study transformed my life. Whether or not I chose to be a platform speaker about my past, that
Mhm.
Bible study transformed my life. It gave me a freedom I could not have before I did it. So that would be what I would hope anyone listening to your podcast would take away, because I would assume that there are quite a few post-abortive people listening.
Yeah. What a follow-up on that, if there's people listening who have a family member who had an abortion, what advice would you have for them?
Well, it would kind of be whether the family member is open to it. I know that there are people out there. I met this great guy at a show we did last year, and he has a really good friend who had an abortion, but just will not talk about it, will not even conceive of the idea of pro-life because of the guilt. I think it's a very sensitive subject, and I think that the biggest thing that I would want to say to someone who has had an abortion, especially if you know they're living in guilt, is it is still forgivable, because that's the thing that people hold on to. It's like I said earlier, we all have a moral compass. We are born with God's law in our heart, and there's guilt and shame wrapped up in that. And people don't like facing the reality that they took a life. It's easier to take a clump of cells, right? But the reality is the eye color, the hair color, the finger, the personality, and the sex are determined the moment the egg fertilizes. As soon as we terminate a pregnancy, we take a life. So no matter what we want to say to excuse that decision, we know. We know. We're all forgivable, though.
It's such a cliche term, but there's that term of like, you don't know like what someone's going through, like until you walk a mile in their shoes idea. And I think it's just really important to kind of have compassion whenever someone's coming guns blazing for abortion. It's like, okay, how much of that is because of their own fear or their own guilt or their own shame that they don't want to face? And then also if someone is going through that, like either way, and they're like very vocal about it, either way, we need to have a lot of compassion towards how we handle the topic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that there are a lot of people who haven't had abortions, but know people who have, and that's the biggest reason they support it too. And you know, a lot of times we hear these people say, I just heard this at the clinic the other day. I don't judge other people for what they choose to do, but I personally am against abortion. If you're against it, be against it. Because it's taking a life. So be vocal about your beliefs. And if you're pro-choice, just go look at a video of what abortion actually is. That'll change your life.
Yeah. Well, Leigh Ann, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been like and thank you for just being able to open up and be vulnerable with our audience, with your story. I always feel bad having people share personal stories in the audience because I'm like, or like on the show, because I don't want to like, unlock old wounds or anything like that. So just thank you for like having the courage to do that.
My pleasure. I pray that God blesses it for somebody because we all need to heal.
Yes. And to all of our audience, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to our audio platforms, please leave us a 5-star review. And as always, keep on living the culture of life. God bless.